All right, welcome back to another episode of Blown Coverage. I'm Mike Bell with my co-host Caleb Schwoyer. Let's get right into this thing. We got a lot to talk about, a lot of great games, and a lot of a big shakeup, I guess, this week in college football with some of the upsets that happened. So let's just start with the early game or the late game on Friday, but it was kind of the first sign of things to come, I guess, this week. That is the Louisville at Miami game. Major upset. I don't think anyone saw it coming. We didn't even give it its due for the games that we kind of covered last week in the preview. And I've always respected Louisville, but I just respect Miami a lot, and I didn't expect Louisville to go in there and beat Miami. And yeah, it was a shocker. Louisville came out and they just scored instantly, and then they're up 14-0. Miami forced to play catch up. And what have we talked about? What have we said on blown coverage? Miami will go as far as Carson Beck takes them. And he threw for 4 interceptions in the game. He did not look good. And my question about the game is like, not to take anything away from Louisville because they completely earned the game. But we were talking about before also the weird bye week situation for Miami.
hmm With
Yeah, and I just wonder, did that contribute to them coming out flat? Now, Louisville was coming off a bye week, and they were coming off a loss against Virginia. And, that motivated them. It was a must-win game for
I believe
Louisville.
it was a close game too. Louisville had against Virginia.
Virginia, yeah, I mean, they really could have won it. So yeah, it was great game. I think the story is look, everyone was putting in, myself included, and I don't think it was wrong, in Miami kind of in this elite group. There was the elite tier, right? There's Ohio State, Indiana, maybe Oregon, and then Miami. And
I mean,
now
the
there's
schedule
going to be,
played up to
yeah,
this point. I mean, it was really good, and they played really well. So it's kind of
right.
hard to have faith.
I mean, look, losses happen, right? So I would still say Miami's a great team, but a lot has to happen for them now. You you're going to worry about Carson Beck now the rest of the way. Is he going to be the elite quarterback that Miami needs? And actually, that's not right. Carson Beck doesn't need to be elite. He just needs to be not
Doesn't
bad.
need to turn the ball over.
Yeah, yeah.
Go for it. Yeah.
So it was a great, I think, way to start off the weekend. I've kind of said a lot about the game. Do you have any thoughts on the game?
I think we just need to be paying attention to Louisville just because I really love their head coach, Jeff Brom. Interesting guy. But Miller Moss, USC quarterback, transfer. Chris Bell, the huge wide receiver that had a pretty good game for Louisville, and also their running back had a really good game. Okay, and up to this point, Miami's had a very stout defense. So, I definitely think Louisville's a team to be watching in the ACC, and I think the ACC is going to have it's going to be very interesting, like in a couple weeks, like when we get down to the wire, just because number one, so many teams that we haven't necessarily heard from or gotten some notoriety like in the last couple of years. They're kind of showing to be some of the top teams. I don't know. I'm excited. I think the ACC is interesting just from the storyline perspective. But yeah, I think Louisville's a team to watch. That's a very good win by them. I believe can't I forgot what statistic they showed on the TV, but I don't know if that was a first oh no, it was their first top two win in since Lamar Jackson took down Florida State, which was number one or number two or something like that. So like almost 10 years ago. It was 2016 when they did that. So anyway, good overall win for Louisville.
Well, so here's the thing. Their coach, which now he's going to be in a lot of conversations for, big jobs, but I believe I saw that he has like a really good record versus top five opponents.
Yeah, which
Um,
is pretty insane because I know he's been in Louisville. I forgot the other places he's been at, but I mean they're not like premier jobs.
mhm. Yeah, I want to say he's 5-0, actually. I could be wrong on that, but I know it's a very good record. But to piggyback off what you were saying on the ACC, This really shakes things up, and I'm really excited to see what happens because I thought if this was going to happen, it would be Miami losing to Florida State. But
Hmm.
with Miami's one loss, they now lose the tiebreaker against Louisville in the standings. Louisville has a very manageable schedule. Now, a lot of these ACC teams are kind of equal, so there could be chaos that happens and there could be more losses for Louisville. Point is, they both have one loss, and Louisville owns the tiebreaker. Virginia and Georgia Tech are still unbeaten in the ACC. Most people, including myself, think Georgia Tech is going to win out, and that is going to make it where Miami is going to have a tough time even getting in the ACC championship. So I'm curious to see what happens with the conference in general. A big loser in this game, it's a good thing they won yesterday, is Notre Dame because one, I mean, they need Miami and A&M to be elite so they can say, hey, look, our two losses were versus elite teams, but also for playoff seeding because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if this is going to turn out to make it where the ACC it's looked at, okay, they're not a great conference, we're only going to choose the conference winner, or does the opposite happen? Is there so much chaos that it's like, okay, now we have to actually choose three teams? Because imagine a scenario where Georgia Tech and Virginia both win out. Or I'm sorry, Georgia Tech and Louisville both win out, maybe Virginia too.
Hmm.
They face each other in the ACC championship. Miami wins out too. They're still probably going to be ranked in the top 10. So it's like, what do you do in that scenario? And that's why, like, I don't know what conversation needs to be had in the committee, but that's going to either take away from Notre Dame, that could take away from a team going in the SEC. But like, should three ACC teams get in? Like, you just have to look at their schedules and say, well, look, these schedules are not equal. I don't know what they're going to
Simple.
do, but
No.
yeah, yeah. But chaos is on the way. And
Yeah.
I think the odds are pretty good that Miami actually does not make the ACC title game. So
Which is pretty insane, to be honest with you.
it is because I mean we've kind of had Miami in this elite tier, and like I said, rightfully so, losses happen.
Yeah.
Um, so this
And
was
speaking of
not
Virginia,
good.
speaking of Virginia, they barely made it out alive against Washington State, who the week before almost beat Ole Miss too. Um, anyway, just like to throw that in there because it's like all of a sudden Washington State's like played really good against some quality opponents. So anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
shout out to them.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. I guess briefly, let's just mention that Nebraska could not pull off the win against Minnesota. This would have been a big game for Nebraska to pull off. I think I saw a stat where Nebraska hasn't won back-to-back road games since like 2006. Would have been a big game for Matt Rule. And yeah, Nebraska is kind of remains in that tier of above average, but just can't get to good. But credit to
Yeah.
Minnesota for pulling this one off. Nebraska now is going to be out of the top 25. Don't know if you have any thoughts on the game.
Not necessarily. PJ Fleck, I think that's the Minnesota head coach's name, but the guy's crazy, crazy good. I think honestly, it's just always. I think Minnesota, like, they're not always at the forefront of the Big Ten conference. I mean, that's a very hard thing to do. Number one, but he's brought Minnesota like every so often, like you hear their name mentioned more so than ever. Honestly, so I'd just like to give some credit to PJ Fleck there. Good win for Minnesota because, like you said, Nebraska's a above average team. They just haven't taken that next step to where it's like, okay, Nebraska's a good team. Be careful. They could go in there and just be consistent throughout the year. They haven't made it to that step yet, which they're still, I don't know, what is this? Matt Rule's like third year or whatever. Yeah, third
Yes.
year. Mm, maybe there's some questions in the coming weeks, depending on how Nebraska finishes this year off. But yeah, that's really all the thoughts I have. Minnesota had a good run game, really good run game.
Mm. Okay, let's move on now to the games that actually took place yesterday on Saturday. Let's start first with Georgia Tech and Duke. This is one of the games I was watching, and again, this has ACC implications. Georgia Tech, one of the easier schedules in the ACC, but if they were going to face a test, it is Duke. If you look at them, they're 4-3, but they're always pretty competitive in
Hmm.
all these games in the ACC. This was a good opportunity for Duke, and they were favored in this game, and they had opportunities really to win this game. They drove down the field their first couple drives. In fact, I'm looking at their yardage. They outgained Georgia Tech 454 yards to 380. They moved the ball fine. They could not finish drives. They had a bad turnover there in the first half, first quarter, I believe it was. In
Yeah, one of
fact,
the
yeah,
early drives, the
yes,
fumble, and I
it
think
just
that was
gave.
a big mental thing
Oh yeah,
because,
because now you're in a hole.
yeah, exactly. Um, I don't know. I think that was just a huge mental thing. I believe that was maybe the only turnover on the day, but it was
It
enough to
was.
kind of propel Georgia ahead. I think anytime you fumble I think that was probably within the 10-yard line, that fumble.
It
I
was.
think anytime you do that, it's like a huge mental thing, and it's just a huge momentum swing. I mean, any turnover is, but especially when the defense gets a turnover like that close to an end zone to where you don't even get the 3 points.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Another thing, another storyline, and we've talked about it, is just Haynes King. He is so good. I mean, the offense runs through him. They need him to
Mhm.
remain healthy. I don't see why he wouldn't be healthy. They're going to be in every game that they play for the rest of the year, including the Georgia game. I'm excited for that game at the end of the year. I think that's going to be a great game. And yeah, watching Georgia Tech this year, because they've nearly lost a couple games to, I know
Mhm.
one of them was Wake Forest, but they are a team that seems to get stronger as the game goes on. Like they'll start a little slow, and in the second half, like they're a second half team, they really have been able to dominate their opponents. So um, good for Georgia Tech. Look, I'm curious to know what their odds are to win the ACC, but they are a very good team. And like I said, for Duke, this was kind of their chance. Now they can still have a good season, but in terms of any sort of a run, playoff, ACC, I think they're probably out of it. I mean, look, it's just one loss. Who knows what's going to happen in this conference? But good win
Yeah.
for Georgia Tech to get out of there with the win, and they might be in the top 10 this week.
You know, kind of just talking about Georgia Tech, it made me really think about like not necessarily like in a play style or anything like that, but I feel like Georgia Tech is almost like the Vandy of the ACC, just in the sense of like they've been down on their luck for the last couple of years. They got a good coach in there, um, pretty intense coach. You're going to get. I know that they've kind of been up and down as far as like almost losing some games and stuff. But as far as a mentality standpoint, I feel like it's like really good. And then just like their team leans heavily into their quarterback, Haynes King, and then, Diego Pavia. So I thought that was interesting. Manny Diaz, the head coach for Duke, is also one of those names that's being thrown out for the Penn State job because he was a defensive coordinator there for a couple of years. So anyway, that's a little interesting storyline with Duke. But yeah, Haynes King just took over the game. Duke's quarterback had a good game. Their wide receiver, I forgot what his name was, but he had a fantastic game too. Bark Eight or Bar Kate, huh? Interesting. So yeah, good win for Georgia Tech. Duke isn't not necessarily a top team by any means, but it's a good quality win for sure.
Yep. Okay, let's move into what I thought was the game of the 11 o'clock window, and that was LSU at Vanderbilt. I said coming
Mhm.
into the week, this game could go either way. No idea what's going to happen. Tell me what you thought about that game.
Man, I thought this was like awesome game. Honestly, I feel like Vandy just kind of like what we were talking about in the preview, man. Vanderbilt is just a little bit more consistent than LSU. And don't get me wrong, LSU kind of like made it a game towards the end, but I felt like Vandy just controlled this entire game, to be honest with you. Diego Pavia did what he needed to do to get his team the win. That's pretty insane too to think about. Like Vanderbilt controlled LSU. I don't know. It sounds weird to say, and it was funny. I don't know if you heard this on College Game Day or not, but Nick Saban was like, he picked LSU, and then Pat McAfee was like, "Are you ever going to pick Vanderbilt or whatever?" And he was like, "It's just hard for me to think of them in that way, you know." And I mean, we both really like Vandy, but it is a little weird to kind of think about them in that sense, like being able to physically compete with LSU. I don't think Nussmeier had a bad game by any means. It's just, I don't know, man. There's like some sort of magic with Vanderbilt. And I think it's just their attitude that they can beat anybody that was really what propelled them. But really, I mean, Diego Pavia had a really good game. I don't know if you saw that. I believe it was a third down or whatever it was. Yeah, I believe it was a third down, maybe in the third, fourth quarter. Like basically, he had this LSU player coming right at him, and he kind of did like a little circle, and then like
Yep.
duked, and then he like turned around, threw it back, and went off for like a really good play. So I don't know. They're an interesting team, and I think LSU. I know Nussmeier has not been consistent, but like when he's firing on all cylinders, yeah. Okay, let me take that back. Nussmeier, when he's not like throwing interceptions, he has the capabilities of being a really good quarterback, even an elite quarterback. He just has not put it together yet for whatever reason. Um, so I think that you have to give Vandy's defense some credit there. Now, K. Durham like popped off for a good run, but other than that, Vandy's defense kind of held their run game uh, to not much, which isn't necessarily the hardest thing to do because they've had issues running all year long. But anyway, just a lot of credit to Vandy and Clark Lee, what he's building up there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a historic season for Vanderbilt. A great story. I was selfishly, as an A&M fan, rooting for LSU just because this is now going to make it tough for. I mean, it's going to be tough anyway, but it's going to make it even tougher for A&M next week.
Mhm.
But Vanderbilt. This, by the way, they've got game day this week. Well earned. This is the first time since 2008 they're going to have game day there in Nashville, and it's only the second time ever they're going to host game day. Weird saying that Vanderbilt's a good team, but used to a good season for them was to be bowl eligible, and now
Yeah,
this is a team with legitimate playoff aspirations. And I think it's pretty cool. You were just talking about Georgia Tech. It's cool to see them being good, but you've got teams like Vanderbilt, like Indiana, that have historically been nobody, that are playoff teams this year. So, pretty great. This is the first time Vanderbilt has had 6 wins before the month of November since 1915.
yeah,
So,
that was the last time they went 6-1 or whatever it was. Yeah,
yeah. So here's the
crazy.
deal. Here's the deal. I think you have to legitimately start talking about Pavia for Heisman. I'm dead serious.
Yeah,
He's
you
been
definitely
great.
have to have him in the conversation. Haynes King,
Yeah.
Mendoza, um, for
Simpson.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, he encompasses what college football is about, really.
Oh yeah. Well, and he is like their team. Like, make no
Yeah.
mistake. If they just plug in another quarterback, they're not that good.
Oh, for sure,
He's like the
without a doubt.
key to them winning that much. He's Johnny Manziel like game changing player. So I'm not saying he should win Heisman. He should be in that conversation.
Yeah,
So that's the Vandy side. On the LSU side, I thought Nuss played a lot better. Nussmeyer, no interceptions for him. By the way, no interceptions for Pavia, which was a big key for me coming into the game. Like,
yeah,
no turnovers
turnovers
for
for sure.
Vanderbilt, no turnovers for either team. I know what you're saying with Vanderbilt maybe controlling the game. I didn't quite see it that way. I thought they kind of took over, maybe even in the fourth quarter. I thought it was kind of a back and forth affair, and it could have gone either way. Vanderbilt kind of felt just a little bit ahead the whole game. So I know what you mean. Um, this was probably the best game I've seen Nussmeier play this year. And now they're kind of in a must-win situation. They've still got A&M and Alabama coming up. So I would be ready for to hear some talk about Brian Kelly's job, and that's going to be interesting. Should there be talk about his job? I don't know. Maybe it's a little unfair, but yeah, I'd
Yeah,
be ready
maybe
for
we
that
should be
talk.
asking Nick Saban about what's fair a little bit more often.
Yeah, well, he's going to say that about every coach that gets fired. I get where he's coming from, Nick
Yeah.
Saban, but it's like I don't know. I feel like in a way he's actually not being fair because it's not like they just fired James Franklin for, like we've said, the loss to Oregon. It's that he's been given a lot of chances to be great, and then in your most hyped up season, you go 3-3, not because you lost to Oregon, because you lost to teams you should be. But anyway, that's kind of a different conversation.
Yeah.
But I get where Nick Saban's coming from. I do. He's
Yeah.
kind of got to say that, so whatever.
Yeah, he does. Otherwise, he'd get a bad rap from the coaches, which, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, let's move on now to another game on the 11 o'clock window was Washington versus Michigan. This was a get right game from Michigan. I was very curious where this was going to go. You picked Washington outright, and I actually thought about picking Washington outright.
Hmm.
And the thing is, like we've said, these Big Ten teams that are traveling now, like across the United States, these road games for them are tough. So Washington going to Michigan, Washington, a lot of people have been saying like, "Hey, they're underrated. They should be in the top 25," and I've agreed with that. But now you have to look at them. Look at them. They faced two good teams: Ohio State, Michigan, and in
Hmm.
both games, their offense did nothing.
Yeah.
Michigan, they if Michigan can control the game and they can play from ahead. I mean, this was a close game going into the third quarter. But if they can play from ahead and run the ball, they are a very tough team to beat. They've got a great defense, great run game, and Underwood is getting better every game.
Yep. And he had a
So
really good game yesterday.
he
Um,
did. He
he
did.
really did. I think the biggest thing was the differentiating factor was, excuse me, Underwood played very good, efficient football, no turnovers, whereas Washington's had three interceptions. I think that's really what screwed Washington. Of course, and like you said, man, Michigan's one of those teams that they're going to be fine as long as they like have the lead and they can play their, just put a huge amount of stock into their run game. Okay. Now, if Washington, their quarterback didn't like throw all those interceptions, were able to put some points on the board and force Bryce Underwood to kind of throw the ball a little bit more, then maybe Michigan would have had some issues. But yeah, Michigan's defense came up clutch, getting those turnovers for them, playing the game that they wanted to play, chew the clock down, just play efficient, good football. I think it's a good win. I think Washington is. I want to say Nick Saban said this on game day. Um, Washington is like there's a big three in the Big Ten, right? And then after that is Washington one of those teams? Maybe this was before, yes, the game, but I do think Washington is a team to watch. I think up to this point they have not. Oh God, I forgot what that stat was. They had an interesting defensive stat. I forgot what it was though. Um, but yeah, and I like Washington's coach too. So anyway, I think a good win for Michigan. Kudos to Sharon Moore at Michigan for this. I think this was a hard, like not a hard game, but like they just lost pretty badly to USC. And if they were to lose this game too, like maybe does that take a lot of the momentum that he's built there like out, and does it turn the season into a tailspin? Who knows? But they came out and manhandled Washington. So good win.
And if the Big Ten is going to get a fourth team in the playoff, no one really knows who that fourth team is going to be. It could still be
Yeah.
USC, Michigan. Uh, Michigan runs the table. Now, granted, they've got Ohio State, but Michigan is still in the conversation. And I agree with you. If they lose this game, you're really going to be talking about the head coach and them in general. But yeah, I think this was a big momentum win for them. So, moving on now, I want to cover maybe two games at once, and you can say whatever you want, obviously, about each game, but just quickly, because I don't have much to say on these games. You have OU versus South Carolina. OU taking care of business. South Carolina continues to be what maybe is the worst team in the SEC, in my opinion. Good game. I was surprised actually how well OU moved the football. It wasn't like great, but it was decent, and their defense continues to be very good. Mateer getting better after that injury, so that's good to see. And then quickly, I just wanted to say Clemson continues to not be the best. They lost to SMU 35-24. Who would have thought both Clemson and Penn State would be 3-4 at this point in the year? Pretty
It's insane,
wild.
man. Yeah, pretty insane.
So yeah, I don't have much to say on those games. I don't know if you do.
Honestly, not really. Just OU was able to get a run game started, and I would say OU is pretty similar to Texas in that regard, as far as like there just being no consistent run game, which is making it really hard on the quarterback and their defense, number one. But as soon as you give them a chance to have a run game, their offense can do pretty well. Um, but yeah, other than that, man, not really. Curious, an SMU's coach too. Speaking about the SMU Clemson game, I've seen his name thrown around for the Penn State job or even the Arkansas job. Um,
Mm,
so that'll be interesting. But yes, in saying that, Clemson is 3-4.
it really is wild. Okay, getting into the big game at 2:30, and I said this would maybe be the game of the weekend. Maybe that's debatable, but I thought it was, if not the best game, maybe the number two game, and that was Ole Miss at Georgia. And
Who
boy,
would
did
be the
I
number
think!
one game in that sense then?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Who would be the number one, or who's what's the game that you were like, okay, maybe it'd be that game that would be the Georgia Ole Miss
Well,
game?
I thought, I mean, you kind of said that Vanderbilt, LSU, that Vanderbilt controlled the game. I didn't think that. I thought it was a back and forth affair. I thought that was a great game. I know you were busy with Kentucky, Texas, but the USC Notre Dame game was
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, it was pretty good.
So I, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not telling you that I
Yeah,
think this
no,
was the number two game.
I was just curious. I mean, the Ole Miss Georgia game, man, I like and I talked about this in our preview. Kirby Smart, just the coaching over there. I know the team's not necessarily the best, but they still like as good as it has been in years past. But they still have an elite coaching staff, and the last two offensive drives for Ole Miss, which that it was insane. That whole game, it was just basically trading. Like whoever got the ball, that I mean, it was just going to be a score. Like, was it going to be a touchdown or a field goal? And for the most part, it was touchdowns. Um, and then at the very end of the game, when they needed to, for Georgia to pull ahead and actually get the lead for the first time since the first quarter when they scored that field goal, Georgia's defense stopped Ole Miss. And
Mhm.
that's how they were able to get the win essentially. Um, really, really great game, I think, to be honest with you, for both teams. Okay, so Gunnar Stockton, that was his first game to kind of come out there and keep Georgia in that game, which was a huge thing. And I believe we were talking about this on the preview. Can Georgia's offense stay ahead of Ole Miss's offense? And that was the other thing too for Ole Miss was how would their quarterback do going to Georgia? Okay, because up to this point he hadn't been in like a huge, like one of the best. Uh, I was about to say arenas, best stadiums in college football. How would he respond to that? And he played very well. Like I can't sit there and knock Ole Miss for losing the way that they did. Now it kind of sucks because it's like Lane Kiffin. I believe they're 6-1 now. When is he going to be able to win against like one of the top tier coaches in the SEC? I guess you could say. And let's see where Ole Miss goes from here because it's like every year Ole Miss starts out 6-0, and then they lose one game, and it's kind of like very iffy the rest of the year if they're going to win or not. So anyway, I thought it was a fantastic game, honestly. And I think it was a great game for both teams. It just so happened Georgia ended up pulling it out. What were your thoughts on it, though?
Well, Georgia continues to just have like infinite number of lives. They just will not
Yeah,
die unless it's Alabama.
it's the new
The team,
Alabama. All those
people,
lives will transfer from Nick Saban to Kirby Smart.
I guess so. I guess so. But yeah, I mean, I thought Ole Miss was going to pull this out.
Yeah, me
Neither
too.
defense could stop the other's offense, but there
Yeah,
is something to be said about, and this is what Georgia does, finishing games. And in the fourth quarter, it was just different. It looked like Ole Miss maybe kind of like, pissed themselves a little bit. And especially when they didn't score on that fourth down drive and they got
yeah,
stopped for the first time and then Georgia went
definitely
ahead,
mental. Yeah,
they didn't know what to do. They were like, "Oh crap." I don't
yeah.
know how Georgia keeps doing it, but they keep doing it. Here's a stat that I would not have believed, and that is Georgia actually outgained Ole Miss 513 yards to 351. I
Oh
thought both
wow.
teams would have had like 500 yards, but
I mean,
it
I know kind
also,
of at the end of the game, Georgia's defense kind of locked down Ole Miss's offense a little bit more, but
yeah.
still, just that wide of separation, that is kind of that is
Well, and Georgia possessed the ball, which makes sense because they run it a little bit more, but they possessed the ball 38 to 22 minutes. So,
right.
so
Which
uh,
that was a huge thing we talked about in the preview was Ole Miss's like quick striking ability. They were going to probably have
mhm,
to run the ball a little bit more, which they do run the ball, but just time of possession matters. I think in huge games.
for sure. Yeah, I agree. I don't think Ole Miss is done by any
Yeah,
means. I think they actually showed that they are for real because I was kind of wondering about that. Like, okay, is Ole Miss like, are they for real? I mean, they played very, very well, at least offensively. Defensively, they obviously have issues, and that's going to be a problem for them. Georgia, they clearly still have issues too, but they know how to win. Fantastic game. Now you've kind of got both powerhouses in the SEC or traditional powerhouses, Georgia and Alabama. They're both going to be in the top 10 now. And yeah, definitely maybe the game of the week for sure. Let's move on. And let's move next. I tell you what, I want to go ahead and get into it. Well, actually, before I get into it, kind of a shocker. Texas Tech falls
yeah,
to Arizona State. I don't know what to think about this game. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I was watching it, and Arizona State, you talk about controlling the game. Arizona State controlled the game. And then late, Texas Tech found a way to score twice. And then Arizona State obviously scores at the end. Look, this game's going to have an asterisk because obviously Texas Tech's starting quarterback was out,
yeah.
but their backup has played well this season, and he's the guy who beat Utah, or at least was part of the equation in beating Utah. So this keeps Arizona State alive in the or not the SEC, but the Big 12. Texas Tech, I'm curious to see how far they drop because they just lost to an unranked team, but again, it's with an
Yeah.
asterisk. This is, creating more chaos. Don't want to take anything away from Arizona State. They won fair and square, but I don't quite know what to think because I've looked at Texas Tech as a legitimate, like, elite team, like a top 10 team, not just some like Big 12 team that's undefeated because they're not facing anybody. Like, no, Texas Tech's a great team.
Oh
But
yeah.
I'm curious to see what's going to happen going forward. Credit to Arizona State because they nearly just lost it at the end, and then they found a way to score at the very end of the game. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, you pretty much touched on it. Texas Tech, I'll be amazed that their backup quarterback has played pretty decently for them in some big games. Arizona State also got their quarterback back, which is,
Hmm.
I think, a huge thing because some people are really high on Sam Levitt. And, this is his first game back in, I don't know, what, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, somewhere in that ballpark. And he threw for 300 yards. Okay. And maybe we found the Achilles heel for Texas Tech. Everybody talks about their defensive line, but I'll need to go back and kind of look at their schedule. But I don't think necessarily Texas Tech has played a team yet that is very good at passing the ball. They play Utah, yes, but what does Utah do? They just pound
Run
and
it.
ground you to death, basically. Um, in Arizona State, I know they're unranked. What are they now? 5-2.
Yes.
keep in mind, 5-2 now. So Arizona State was ranked 12th in the preseason, and then they lost. Crap, I forgot who they lost to off the top of my head. It was right there,
Mississippi
but
State.
yeah, Mississippi State, um, who almost took Florida toe to toe and almost won last night. But I don't think Arizona State is a bad team by any means. They're probably a good team. I like their coach. Sam Levitt's really good. They kind of have a oomph about them. So anyway, I think that's the biggest thing. Arizona State gets Sam Levitt back. Texas Tech isn't playing with their starter. More so, the Arizona State getting their quarterback back.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that Mississippi State Florida game quickly. I was watching this game, and it was one of the games of all time. By that I mean it was not maybe the best game to watch, but Florida nearly just gave this one away. I mean, Mississippi State's a good team. I think both these teams know they kind of need to win. Billy Napier knows that he needs to win. If he loses this game, he's probably gone today. He might be gone today anyway. I actually think, I don't know. I'm curious to see what they do there at the head coach position. But Mississippi State, I don't know if you were watching it, but fourth quarter, they were in field goal range to win this game. And then they throw a bad pass with like 30 seconds left, intercepted by Florida. And yeah, good win for Florida I mean, they just got to get all the wins they can. Mississippi State continues to show that they're improved. I don't know where their wins are going to come from this year because they've got a gauntlet of the schedule. Although I will say this, I hope you as a Texas fan are ready for them because Mississippi
Yeah, we
State's a
played it.
decent team, and then you're going to
Yeah,
be at
right.
their place.
We'll talk about that at our and we are playing them at Mississippi State. We'll talk about that in our preview of this upcoming week. But yeah, I am nervous for sure. If you want
Yep.
to, we can go ahead and get into the Texas Kentucky game because we got the USC and uh,
Let's do that. I want to make a quick mention. Memphis lost to
uh-huh.
UAB. I
Yes,
don't
sir.
want to go over the game, but they lost, and Memphis was a potential playoff team. That's going to take them out of the playoffs. They face USF this week, and that was going to be
That could
maybe
be
the
a good.
game of the American who was going to make it from that conference.
Yeah,
Now Memphis is probably out of it. Just wanted to make a quick mention.
for sure.
But let's go ahead and get into that Kentucky Texas game. What happened? What happened there?
So I I think what I said was I wouldn't be surprised. Like I didn't really think much of it in a sense, but I said that Mark Stoops, Kentucky, really good defensively. No matter what the record says, it's a tough little trap game. Um, and I maybe think that was a little bit of a component to it. Not to say like, oh, that's an excuse or anything, but like we just came off a huge emotional win against Oklahoma, and Kentucky's in this spot where it's like do or die in a sense for the season. So it was a dangerous spot to be in. Basically, Kentucky's defense just beat the crap out of our offensive line, made it really hard on Arch to just be able to even have time to look back there to pass. It was pretty atrocious. And honestly, without our kick returner, we would have lost this game. Honestly, that's the majority of where our offensive yards came from was just the kickoffs or the kick returns. We have got to figure something out on the offensive line if we want to just be competitive in the SEC. Um, our defense played very well. Their quarterback, I want to give some props to Kentucky's quarterback because, I believe he's a true freshman. And honestly, he was just kind of dunking and surgically tearing us apart, which is not easy to do. Um, and you kind of briefly brought it up kind of at the or before we got on here, but Kentucky probably should have just not run it up the middle as much as they did on that last and that overtime drive that they had against us. I mean, they should have just swung it out or something quickly. I don't know what made Mark Stoops kind of think that was the way to go there. But Anyway, I'm glad he decided that. And Texas finally has a very good kicker. The last couple of years, that has been a weak spot in our special teams unit. And he came up big for us. It was. I would like to say that was a good win in a sense, like it was ugly, but we got it done, which I think there is some stock to put into that in a sense. But yeah, I mean, it just makes me nervous for the rest of the year for sure because I don't know. I think there's like a balance between Mark Stoops and their defense, and I think there is something to be said. I think he would probably go around the SEC and say, "Hey, who is a sneaky good defensive team no matter what happens?" I think a lot of people would end up saying like Kentucky, but our offense was just pathetic last night, honestly.
It was maybe the worst I have seen Texas's offensive line. Like I actually thought it was their worst game. I thought it was
What
worse than
this year?
Florida. Yeah,
Well, yeah, right. Because at least I mean, trying to remember what the score. I mean, our offense was at least moving the ball to some degree on Florida. This game, it's like we couldn't do anything. We couldn't
by
run
the
it.
way, yeah, when you guys did move the ball, you guys should be thanking your special teams. It was really your special teams return that kind of kept y'all
Yeah,
like
no,
in.
that's what I was saying. Our
Yeah,
special teams unit is what won us the game and the majority of our offensive yards.
yeah, yeah. Look. I'm gonna sound like a hater, and I'm not gonna cover it for too long. But you're, oh, who's got a sneaky good defense? Kentucky? No, 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 no. Yes. Is Kentucky like just a horrible defense? No, they're the worst team in the SEC. Kentucky's always been the worst team in the SEC. When you go to Kentucky, you got to take care of business. This was not a good win for Texas. I mean, there is something to be said for winning the game. Fine, you guys stay alive. That's not what I would be taking from this. This was, I don't know. This was, sirens should be going off. You got to take care of business against that kind of team. Mississippi State's better, tougher environment to play in. Then you got Vandy. Yeah, Texas has issues. And as far as Kentucky's quarterback moving the ball, like that's a problem because they don't have a legit offense either. It's a bad team. Kentucky is a bad team. And they were, a couple inches away from winning this game. Texas wins. They find a way to win. Credit to them. But you're right in the sense that it's a trap game because you're coming off an emotional win against Oklahoma. But you kind of had like the perfect next opponent, I would say, to take care of business. And something's just off for Texas. Something's just off. So that's all I have to say about it. If you have a rebuttal, you can give me the rebuttal. But I would not think highly of Texas after this one.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to be a contender of anything. Like, no matter what the conference is, if your offensive line can't do anything, right? Uh, until we, uh, until we figure out something to at least improve them. Yeah, I mean, the season is not looking too fair for us at the moment.
Agreed. Okay, let's get into these big games at 6:30. Let's start with Alabama, Tennessee, Tennessee, Alabama. This is one of the games I was, I guess, kind of mostly wrong about, I would say, because I thought this would be a more competitive contest. I know this is going to sound bold in the sense it's like a no duh thing to say, but I don't think enough people are talking about Alabama. And you say, "Oh, what are you talking about? Everyone's talking about Alabama." Not enough people are talking about Alabama being fully back and being back to an elite team. I said that the elite teams people are thinking about was Miami, Indiana, Ohio State. I think now you have to start talking about Alabama a little bit in that category. At this point, their loss to Florida State was just fluky. What they're doing is so impressive. It really does look like the Alabama of old. I think this is a team. Look, Ohio State is like the best team in the country. There's some separation there. But I mean, Alabama, for them to blow out Tennessee like that and not just blow them out, what they're doing against the schedule that they have had, at some point you just think that they would throw up a dud. They'd be a little bit exhausted. They look better and better and better each week. you know, they really dominated Tennessee. really both sides of the ball. I mean, Tennessee is an offense that has moved the ball very well. And Tennessee, I mean, I think the game was probably over when they threw that pick six at the end of the second quarter. You were talking about in the Duke Georgia Tech game how those kind of plays like can really change, momentum and all that. That's a tough hole for Tennessee at night at Alabama, but I just couldn't be more impressed with Alabama. And now I really would put them, if I had to power rank the SEC teams, it's Alabama number one. People have said there's not an elite team in the SEC. I think it's time to start talking about Alabama in that way. Tennessee, I don't know what to say about them. I still can't really figure them out. I can't deduct too much from them for going to Alabama and losing, but they don't have a great win this year either. They're going to have more opportunities, but I just really can't say enough about Alabama. Ty Simpson, who's one of the front runners for Heisman, and yeah, it looks like Alabama may run the table, and if they run the table, that's the most impressive resume in college football. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah, and that's pretty much like what I would say too. I think it's pretty huge that Alabama's defense only gave up 20 points to the offense of Tennessee. I think that they're the fourth best offense in the nation. Um, yeah, and Josh Heupel has had a top tier offense no matter what every single year he's been there. So I think that's people, if they had questions about Alabama, it was, I guess you could say, their defense more so than their offense. And I think for them to come up big in this game and just hold them to 20 points, and for the most part, Alabama just kind of manhandling Tennessee, I would say. I mean, hey, that's really good. It doesn't surprise me necessarily how Ty Simpson, like how well he played, and that if anything, the offense, they just need to kind of figure out their run game and just have at least a consistent like player that they can count on. And they had like the last couple weeks, like when they played Missouri and Vandy, they what was his name, Miller? Yeah, their running back Miller. He was having some really good games for them, and then Tennessee's defense was able to kind of stop that trend this game. But I don't know. Alabama, I mean, and I had the same thought about them after this game. I was like, honestly, like I know Ohio State is number one, and they just had a really good game against Wisconsin. I mean, Wisconsin, but um, honestly, I don't care about the one loss against Florida State anymore. I would almost beg to say, like, just put Alabama at number one. Just who else could do this right now on their like with Alabama's schedule, the way that they've played, who else could do that? You know, I know Ohio
Ohio
State's defense.
I mean, they're
I
pretty
know
good.
I okay. I know Ohio State's defense is really well, but how would Julian Sand play against these teams? And he's
Pretty
played
good list.
well. I'm just sitting here and saying who's played more emotional, maybe more hard fought games up to this point. Definitely Alabama versus Ohio State for sure.
The resume is better. I agree.
So anyway, really good win for Alabama, and like you said, I don't know really where to put Tennessee at this point. They play Kentucky next week. Sneaky game. We'll see how it goes, though. In all seriousness, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Okay, let's move into the other game. I thought this was in competition for being the game of the week. That was USC at Notre Dame. And I just have to say off the top, I think this game had two of the best players in the country. And that is Jeremiah Love, who I just continue to be impressed by each and every week. I think he's the best running back in the country. He has some competition for that. Missouri's guy, Hardy. Nebraska, I know, has a good running back. Michigan has great running backs, but Jeremiah Love is just different. I feel like there's a running back I'm forgetting, but he um, he should win whatever that award is for the best running back.
Doak Walker Award, I believe, is what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah. I mean, that guy is like he's just insane. And to watch it, and they have two great backs, by the way. They can really run the ball. Let's see, what did they run for? They ran for 308 yards.
Yeah.
308
Jeremiah
yards.
Love had 228 yards. The first time, or they had like a little stat up there. Somebody ran for that like a little bit more than him in 2023. And then Jerome Bettis in the 90s had like closer to 300. But I mean, anytime a running back has 228 yards is pretty insane. Now, do we have much stock into USC's offense? No, but it's still really good. Like, how often do you see running backs get over that much? And frankly, every
Right.
time you watch Notre Dame's offense, who has been like very impressive up to this point, but Jeremiah Love is a huge part of that, and he just blows you off the screen pretty much every time he's on there. So
Yeah,
both
no,
receiving and rushing and running the ball.
yeah, and the thing is, this was actually maybe Notre Dame's worst game in terms of their passing. But again, it didn't matter. Now, also it was raining, and that may have affected things. But Notre Dame continues to look just so impressive on the offensive side of the ball. The other player I want to talk about is on the USC side, and he may win the award for the best receiver, and that is something Lemon, however you say his last name, Lemon,
Yeah,
whatever. He's
I'm just gonna
yeah,
say
yeah,
Lim.
yeah. He is just so good. Now he had a really bad fumble on what was supposed to be like a trick play, and that really hurt USC. I give USC a lot of credit for going in there, and this was really a competitive contest. USC had opportunities to win this game. I kind of didn't think it would be like that. I kind of thought Notre Dame would control it, and instead Notre Dame just kind of pulled away at the end. USC kind of showed some struggles. They had some turnovers. They had 3 turnovers in this game, and that probably was the difference in this game. And yeah, for USC, I mean, look, it wasn't a Big Ten game. They still only have one Big Ten loss, but they have, I know, Oregon, UCLA, which is still a big game. And I want to say somebody else, Nebraska, at Nebraska, I think. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what USC does from here. I was actually pretty impressed by them. I did not think they would show up. They actually did. I know it's a rivalry game, all that. I hope they can figure out something on the schedule side to make these two teams play next year and obviously in the years going forward. I think it's a travesty. It's not figured out right now. These teams, they've just got to play every year. It should be like a law. But fantastic game. Again, Jeremiah Love, can't say enough about him. Notre Dame, they've got to just continue to win. This was maybe their last big test. And yeah, Lincoln Riley continues to have road struggles. They've got to figure that out. But I think he's kind of bought himself one more year. And yeah, this was a great game to watch. What were your thoughts?
Well, this may be like Lincoln Riley's best overall USC team that he's had there. Um, I know they went 9-4, I believe his like first year with Caleb Williams, but I think Caleb Williams just really kind of put some band-aids on that defense. It was, rough. And like you said, I know that Notre Dame was able to carve up a good amount of rushing yards. Notre Dame's always been a really good, like every year that it seems like they have an offensive line going in the first round. I mean, that's just what Notre Dame does. They are just able to ground and pound you. And then when they're really good, it's when they have a quarterback that can throw the ball like really well, which is what CJ Carr has done. I think USC, like obviously very heavy on the offense, but their defense is like doing just enough for the most part to either propel them to win the games or keep them in there. And I think it is something to be said that there was a pretty competitive game. It's just USC had the 3 turnovers versus Notre Dame's 1 turnover. I think that was the key in this game. But honestly, the time of possession really wasn't all that different, which you kind of find surprising. Because with Jeremiah Love like having as many rushing attempts as he did and as much yardage, you would have thought that Notre Dame like there would be a huge disparity. But USC had let me look here. Had 27 minutes time of possession, whereas Notre Dame had 32, or but basically 33 minutes. So there's really not too much of a spread on that, which I kind of found a little surprising. But anyway, I mean, good showing for both teams. USC has a couple big games coming up for sure. Notre Dame, like you said, it's they control their destiny. The games that the remaining games that they play should be able to win, but you know how that goes.
Well, again, seeding could be weird for them. They definitely have to win out, but I think even if they win out, it could be tough. But
Hmm.
we will see. A lot could happen. Okay. Last game that I really watched. So actually, before I say the last game I really watched, because I didn't watch a lot of this other game, let me cover it first. Utah BYU. BYU found a way to win 24-21. I was surprised BYU kind of controlled the game the way they did. I thought Utah was really going to step up here. I think Utah is showing. I've said all year BYU is overrated, but maybe it's just Utah that's overrated because Utah they've been ranked. They've lost to their two significant games: Texas Tech, BYU. BYU continues to find a way to win. Good for them. Hey, let's see. BYU they're now first place in the Big
The Big
12, right?
12.
Are they alone in first place? Is there another undefeated team in the Big 12? I don't know.
Cincinnati is 4-0 as well.
Okay. Okay. So BYU could
Arizona
be.
State's behind them too now. And then
Mhm.
Texas Tech. So BYU, Cincinnati, Arizona State, Texas Tech are the top four teams of the Big 12.
Yeah, that's going to be a fascinating conference to watch. I know
Yeah, it is.
BYU still faces. Do they face Tech? I was going to pull up their schedule. I gotta see that. I don't have it in front of
Yeah,
me,
I'll look. Yeah, they play Texas Tech in 2 weeks. So
so that's
next
going to
game,
be a great game.
yeah, next game for BYU is at Iowa State, which don't knock that game off. It is hard to go into Ames, and then at Texas Tech.
And then they've got at Cincinnati too at the end. So
Yeah,
that's going to be a really cool conference to watch. I don't have anything on this game unless you do.
yeah. I don't really have anything much to say on this game.
Okay, last game that maybe we'll talk about, and that is Missouri Auburn. And Auburn has made every team that they have faced this year, every game has like been a bad game to watch. And I think that says a lot about actually Auburn. And I think that's because these games are often like defensive
Hmm.
games, you know? And I think you actually have to give Auburn credit for that on the defensive side of the ball. And then offensively, they just can't do enough. I give actually major props to Missouri. Again, that is a tough place to play at night.
Oh, for
First
sure.
road game of the year for Missouri. They went in, for Missouri, and they went in, won the game, found a way to win when it looked like maybe they were going to lose it because they went down 17-10, forced overtime, win in overtime. The play calling for Auburn continues to be very suspect. I don't really get what's going on there. I don't know what to expect from Auburn. Whatever. Credit to Missouri because now they're in the hunt for the playoffs for the SEC, and they face Vandy this week. I thought it was a very good comeback win for Missouri, being an emotional loss last week against
Hmm.
Alabama. And yeah, I'm very excited for their game in the upcoming week against Vanderbilt. So yeah, credit to Missouri. They needed to find a way to win that one, and they did.
I agree pretty much with everything you said. To me, man, I mean, if Hugh Freeze just had like a somewhat decent quarterback, man, Auburn would be they would be very dangerous this year because, like you said, every game they make it ugly, which is a credit to Auburn's defense. So if they actually had a quarterback that could really threaten you as far as like passing the ball, because that's the thing. Jackson Arnold, it's like yes, and I know he still had 200 passing yards, but really, man, it's just I don't know how to describe it other than he's dual threat. He relies on his legs a lot to make the offense go. And I don't know, I'm just not necessarily scared. And I think the only reason why he's had as much success throwing the ball this year is because he's got Cam Coleman, who you can basically just throw the ball up to, and the guy can go up there and just snatch it out of the air, which makes it really easy on the quarterback, especially one that's not necessarily the best passing. But yes, huge because of all those things I just said. Huge credit to Missouri. Emotional loss last weekend, and we were talking about this last week. One of the hardest places to play in the country, I think, being at Auburn. So huge, huge culture win for Missouri. I think.
And their head coach is going to be in the running now for some jobs. Him and Clark Lee from Vanderbilt.
And
They
honestly, my heart would kind of break if like Clark Lee left Vandy. Which he keep in mind with him, he's an alumni of Vandy, so
mhm.
Vandy may be able to get. away with him not like leaving per se, maybe because it'll play with his heartstrings a little bit. Now the Missouri coach, open field.
Here's the deal. Uh, Pavi is going to be gone after this year.
Yeah.
So this may be Clark Lee's like best chance if he wants to
Right.
go
Yeah.
coach. So
Right. Which is the other equation to that. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to mention? I know you're kind of maybe short on time today. I think we've covered a lot, but any other game you want to talk about? Anything? Any other storyline?
I mean, we talked about my team struggles, but not your team's. I think that's a little unfair. If you want to briefly
Well, I
touch on
mean,
the game, and I had it on the other screen, so I watched maybe the majority of the first half. Now the second half, not so much, just because of the Texas game coming on. And anyway, but
well, I mean
just
that's
feel free to touch on it.
yeah. I mean that's I think a complete false equivalence. One, there's a big difference between Arkansas and Kentucky.
Jesus,
Arkansas has scored on
I'm
everybody.
just
Arkansas has scored on everybody except Notre Dame. I don't know how Notre Dame pulled that off. Arkansas, like, they just get chunk play after chunk play. They really are a dynamic offense, and then they really do just suck on defense. A&M offensively, I mean, they just couldn't be stopped except for like one drive. And then I mean, the game basically went exactly how I thought it would go, and it came to A&M just getting enough stops on defense. And I mean, if you watch the game, A&M really did control it. Although
there
Arkansas
were
just
a couple of
always,
moments though where Arkansas was like, okay.
yeah, they threatened. They definitely did threaten. But Arkansas just has too many problems. If they could put together a defense, they would legitimately be one of the scariest teams in the country because on offense they can just score at will. It seems like A&M defensively obviously did have a very rough game. I have to give credit to Arkansas though because they do that to everybody, but the defense needs to be better. Defending the quarterback run is a problem for A&M, and we don't really face anybody on the schedule quite like that because he's a big guy that can run. I think he's like one of the faster guys in the SEC.
Talking about
And
Arkansas's quarterback.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he's definitely a monster, man, for
he's a
sure.
monster. So for A&M, huge win because, like I said, their road games coming up are tough at LSU now, at Missouri, and then at Texas. This pretty much guarantees that they will have a better season than last season. All they have to do, I mean, they only have to win two more now to get to 10 wins. And this was a big win because now you can, not that you want to lose any games going forward, but now you can kind of afford a loss when it happens. And spoiler alert, I think it's going to be this weekend. But you needed to win this one. This was the most winnable of them all versus a bad opponent. And yeah, the first road game in a month. And now A&M's kind of felt that. Yeah, I was just happy they won the game. These rivalry games are always close. Like these games are always a heart attack with Arkansas. First game in Fayetteville in 15 years. That's really all I have to say about it. And yeah,
Okay. I mean, that's just all I wanted to hear. I wasn't necessarily sitting there saying, oh, yeah, that's an equivalent game to the Texas Kentucky game. Just saying, defense struggled a little bit. Not to say
yeah,
that, hey, I mean, how many defenses could handle that? And like you said, it's kind of weird that Notre Dame's was able to handle it. But, you know,
makes no sense.
I think I wonder, like, that game made me think yesterday because honestly, I think you do have to give Arkansas credit for showing up and being very competitive in that game, especially with losing Sam Pittman. I know that's been kind of like, what, 3 weeks ago. So they've had time to kind of see. And Bobby Petrino has kind of been in that exact situation before. So he kind of knows how to do it. A question I have in my head is like, I wonder with the boosters, the president, whatever at Arkansas, I wonder how quick they were. And I think they gave Sam Pittman enough time, but like to know, like, hey, Bobby Petrino, the last Arkansas coach that really kind of had us pretty in a pretty good spot for a couple of years, he's right there to take over the helm. Do you want to just let Sam Pittman go to see what he can do with it? That being said, he inherited a great offense, but horrible defense, like you said. Curious to see what will happen at Arkansas at the end of the year because I know we keep on mentioning, like, hey, here's all these coaches that could, like, I don't think the Missouri head coach would leave to go to Arkansas. James Franklin could take the Arkansas job potentially just to get his hat back in there. But who's to say that Bobby Petrino won't take the head coaching job? I mean, at least he's got a history, because Arkansas is a unique place. I don't think anyone can go in there and necessarily be like automatically thought of, okay, winning culture here. Maybe Nick Saban, maybe Kirby Smart or something like that. Like, you're talking about two of the best coaches in the league, but um, I don't know. I think it'd be very interesting to see at the end of the year who Arkansas puts there as the head coach. Because, like you said, if they just had a good enough defense, they'd be a very dangerous team.
Agreed. Agreed. Okay. Well, I think that pretty much wraps things up. Um, Caleb, been good talking to you. And I'll talk to you next time.
All right, see you.